Balia Ngando état d'esprit, mokili mobimba, Claude Motima.
After almost 60 years of independence for many African countries, although I remain optimistic about the prospects of the continent, I'm alarmed by the chronic instability experienced in certain areas like my own country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. As we all know, Africa is extremely endowed in natural resources and is a key global provider in many resources such as oil, cobalt, coltan, cocoa, copper, for instance. Today, those resources are not benefiting the continent significantly because they are being exported with no added value. We need to start thinking beyond the simple extraction of resources as a means for development, because it simply isn't one. That means we must secure strategic global partnership which will help us modernize and diversify our economies and secure our future and the future of our children. This is the challenge for the global partnership we seek to forge. New global partnership for Africa's development. I've always told my kids that before to look at new things, it is important to consider what one already has and determine if one has made the best use of it. And then use this information to build on the new approach. What does this mean in the context of Africa? African countries have different levels of development, as well as different socio-economic and geopolitical realities. As a result, some countries are better equipped than others to engage in global partnership and make them work for the people. The growth and the socio-economic development in the West and the Eastern African region have commanded many rightful advancements. The positive perception has allowed many of those countries to attract better quality and more diversified foreign direct investment. Ethiopia, Nigeria, Ghana, and Kenya, among others, have been favorite destination for many investors in the commodities, banking, telecom, and fast-moving consumer goods spaces, for instance. Although those countries share different experiences, one of the key common denominators for sustained improvement is the consolidation of the rule of law and a clear visibility on the development of the nation. When investors understand the rule and can project themselves in the medium to long term, we, the people, are better equipped to negotiate win-win agreements. This requires both strategic vision, good governance, and a strong commitment for institution building as the bedrock of development. Legitimacy as a key underpinning of such vision and commitment is critical to generate shared, tangible, and long-lasting results. Many countries have seen tremendous results following this framework. Attracting partners on a shared vision is very important. This needs to be an inclusive development process rather than imbalanced from inception. But in order to do so, there are prerequisites. We see many debates around the world on the benefit of super integration. Although integration and globalization have generally created tremendous wealth, it has left too many fragile populations at the margins. Our challenge in Africa is to create the necessary integration we need to matter on global frameworks, but with a development which is shared among the many and not the few. Take the example of Ghana, for instance, which has decided to make French a national language, given that only 3 of its neighbors and therefore national trading partners are Francophone countries. If a country is better integrated with its immediate neighbors and the sub-region, both in economy and trade terms, but also in its social development and culture, it stands a better chance to attract investors interested in the synergies offered by the bloc rather than itself as a standalone country. However, for all their goodwill, countries must also adopt a dual approach in forging partnership. On the one hand, countries must make an effort to be reliable partners, and on the other hand, be strong actors on the regional scene. The largest untapped opportunity for Africa is intra-Africa trading. While it is very important to develop strong bilateral ties on a global basis, the lack of diversification of those partnerships is a threat to the natural competitive tension required to make any economy perform. We should not have to choose between China and the United States or between Latin America and Europe, but rather have approaches that are mutually beneficial to all parties and with the aim to lift people out of poverty, stimulate economic activity, and provide the training and education needed to develop our nations. This is the challenge that global partnerships need to deliver on. And the African leaders have a responsibility to execute on this. But like in many companies and well-run organizations, both the macro management, vision, leadership, regional ambitions, and the micro management, institution building, health and education, democratic culture, and the good governance are necessary to make the world work cohesively. Following that same logic, a failing state in an ambitious region will not be able to drag the group to more than the sum of all parts. This is still clearly the case of my country, the Democratic Republic of Congo. Democratic is just by the name. Shortcuts in the democratic process and institution building cannot be erased by so-called efforts under undemocratic rules and illegitimate leadership. Democracy is important in that it creates accountability. More than anything else, African leaders need to be held accountable for their governance, just as a chief executive officers track KPIs and set up performance reviews from which they can ultimately suffer consequences. Head of states need to answer to the people on their policies and their achievements. That's when legitimacy becomes important, because more often than not, good policies are unpopular, and one needs the legitimacy to obtain through the democratic process to navigate through tough but needed structural reforms. When you cannot do this because you have killed the democracy, the democratic culture, and erased the very notion of legitimacy, then you are left with chaos. For decades, my country, Congo, has embodied what not to do: recurring lack of legitimacy, plundering of natural resources, and lack of strategic vision, the textbook for all failed states. Because illegitimate leaders do not feel the burden of accountability, they are most interested in taking as much they can, as quickly as possible, their reign being clouded by the spectrum of illegitimacy. What good if a partner that does not have the popular underpinning necessary to drive through complex regional and international partnership? The DRC should lead in those aspects and not to be led by its shortcomings. Integration works when everyone benefits from it. One cannot realistically achieve long-lasting economic stability when its neighbors are being left behind. Eventually, it will become a burden. The world is changing very fast, and I remain confident that regional integration and the global partnerships between blocs remain a key ingredient to a successful Africa that delivers for its people. But it is important to always remember that integration can only be as successful as the fundamentals that underpin it. Nation and institution building eventually benefits the whole and create the necessary condition for sustained and inclusive development. The lack of it is a constant threat to both the nation, the region, and those forge global partnerships. On December 30th, 2018, in the hope of a democratic political transfer of power that carried an immense desire for change, the Congolese people went to the polls to elect the new president and the new parliamentary and the provincial representatives. In an effort to maintain the former president, Mr. Kabila's system, the Independent Electoral Commission, the short saying, independent also by the name, the Electoral Commission simply fabricated results, cynically ignoring the sovereignty of the Congolese people. As you know, those irregular results were not consistent with the truth of the ballot as witnessed by observers, including the Catholic Church, and as detailed by data leaked from the Electoral Commission's central server, which were published in credible international media. Convened in Addis Ababa in January 17th this year to examine the post-electoral crisis prevailing in Congo, African head of state made a step in the right direction by calling on Congolese authority to quote, abstain from proclaiming the definitive result of December 30th, 2018 elections, and to wait for the arrival of the high-level delegation comprised of the President of the African Union, the President of the African Union Commission, as well as other heads of state and government, to engage in the dialogue with all Congolese stakeholders in an effort to reach a consensus on way out of the post-electoral crisis in the country, end quote. The rebuttal of the initiative by the Congolese government did cast a discredit without precedent on the African Union effort to help the Congolese people. The acceptance by many leaders of the status quo in light of this electoral fraud was disturbing. And today, more than ever, the Congolese people is wondering, what is the purpose of electoral process in Congo if the voice is not heard and not considered when so clearly and democratically demonstrated? The evidence is overwhelming, and no one can contest the true result in good faith. The legality that a court and an electoral commission controlled by former President Mr. Kabila just conferred to usurpers is not synonymous with legitimacy. To that extent, the explanatory memorandum of our Constitution is explicit and unfortunately still be relevant. Quote, since its independence on June 30th, 1960, the Democratic Republic of Congo is confronted with recurring political crisis, which has fundamental roots in the contestation of the legitimacy of its institutions and its actors. This is why I proposed to the African Union to uphold its stated commitment to justice and truth by creating a special committee for the verification of the truth of the ballot. Unfortunately, my proposal was not considered, and the AU accepted to move forward with recognizing a sham election. Accepting this travesty in the name of hypothetical stability is to despise the will of the Congolese people and condemn the DRC to instability. Today, we are facing many questions. On the one hand, you have, first, an illegitimate Mr. Tshisekedi who is seeking help to fix his legitimacy issues. Second, you have Mr. KABILA, who is still pulling the strings and would like to corrupt me for silence. Third, some people, including the international community, asking me to just let it go. Let me ask you a question. If it was you, what would have been done? Sorry? No. And on another hand, I have the Congolese people, my people, who believe in the democratic process and voted for me with more than 62%. What do I do? This is the question. Keep fighting. Oh, this is my answer. I will not let my people down. All the time. Thank you. Indeed, this is not about me or KABILA or Tshisekedi. This is about the Congolese. This is about respect for sovereignty as the exclusive power of the people. And we need to demonstrate to our people who courageously carried us through the African continent and the world that when we said that we are committed to democracy and nation building, we mean it. Not just for a vote, but as the only way forward to build our nation. The relevance of what happened in my country is a good example of the failure of integration, both at the regional level and the continental level. The SADC, the regional organization, which we are a part of, should have implicated itself to push for a stronger Congo, not a weaker one. Democratic principles are core to creating the necessary condition for strong win-win partnerships. The elite, who you belong, have a singular responsibility to promote and defend values that make nations stronger. Democracy, good governance, rule of law, legitimacy, and win-win principles. Those are values that we should lead with as they are mutually beneficial to all. As political leaders of Africa, we should never forget that the prerequisite to successful global partnership is to uphold the sovereignty of the people as the sole emanation of power, and to govern by it and for it solely. Therefore, it is important to approach this new era of globalization with a strong commitment to building strong nations and a strong continent. and to resist the temptation of rushing through or skipping fundamentals. Change a city to change a nation. Change a nation to change a region. Change a region to change a continent. This is challenge facing all of us. I would like to thank the Harvard Kennedy School of Government, as well as the African students, for putting together this wonderful conference. You are our best, brightest ambassador, and we surely hope that you will be back home and put your intelligence and ideas to the service of the continent. I encourage you to remain optimistic about the promise of Africa and engage as much as you can with the continent as you pursue your study. I will do my part. I will continue to fight for the continent. I will continue to fight for my country. I will continue to fight for the better of the world. Thank you very much. God bless you.
That was a very outstanding and impactful speech on the intersection of partnership, integration, and most importantly, democracy. We are now going to open it to questions from the audience. Please line up by the mics. Please keep your questions as questions and also concise, and be respectful, please. Thank you. Okay, so we'll start over there.
Thank you. Thank you very much for addressing us today. I'm a Zimbabwean, and we have had a lot of elections stolen from us. I completely feel the pain of the Congolese people. Now to my questions. A number of African leaders, both in the ruling and opposition parties, struggle with passing the baton to the younger people. And I'm wondering, what strategies do you have in place for your generation to pass on the baton and probably train younger Congolese people whilst you're still in that position as a leader, so that you can effectively pass on power? And earlier today I was talking to my Kenyan friends, and one of the things that we all agreed was lacking in our respective countries was an effective opposition. How do you remain effective in between elections? Because most times we see our leaders, opposition leaders, during elections, and sometimes we see them when there's a crisis. But in between, we do not hear from them. So how do you remain effective? And also, how do you keep to your principles and convictions, especially when there is a danger of being co-opted? Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Rosebell Kagumire. I'm from Uganda. I have a question regarding the involvement of women, Congolese women, in the political process. As a woman who follows politics, it was sad for me to follow the news, which was mostly about men fighting for power, just another symptom of how non-inclusive our politics are. What is your own vision in terms of really, truly giving platforms for women in a country where most of the front runners, we don't see women's faces, and the impact is immense? Thank you.
Yeah, the first one, we need the young people to start thinking about their country, to also join the political party, to start discussing the issues of the countries, of the continent. And if you can remember, during our independences in Africa, our leaders, they team up. They had close relationship. You can see Senegal to Congo to Ghana and to South Africa. If you see when South Africa fought for apartheid, it was the whole continent who fought. It was not South Africa only. That's why today we are Congolese are telling South Africans and South African leaders they don't have to forget what the whole continent did for South Africa. And we are telling the youth, please, don't let the others alone. Don't let them do what they are doing. Let them do, just looking for money. They have to see your future, and you have to be behind them, and close to them, and put them on the right way. Now, for me to remain effective, I'm a fighter. I'm a fighter. The Congolese people call me people soldier. Now they are calling me people commandant. Okay. I will continue because I'm not working for myself. My life is almost in the past. I've worked for a big organization. I've worked for a big organization, and now I think there is a time for me to fight for my country, to put myself as a model for the youth, so we can together achieve wonders for our country. I continue to keep myself, as a man of values, a man who has some basis and who's not corrupt. And I always tell my people and go to the TV program, if there is one guy in this world who has corrupted me, who has given me one, like Nigerians say, one kobo, let him stand up. I work in Nigeria 2 years, yes. I work in Mali 2 years. I work in Ethiopia 2 years. I work in Kenya. I work, in many countries in Africa. I work in my own country 10 years. And I think that one has to have some values. And the companies that I work with before, this is ExxonMobil, is a company known with, values, and I have to keep on those values to remain the same. Yeah, my sister from Uganda, yes, we sometimes we're having problem with women in the politics, but I always trust women because when women decide to do something, they are really committed to. And it's very important to work with women. I'm a president of a political party, and my second in command is, a woman. She's a lawyer, and she's performing very well. And we always try to have, this 50-50 as is put in our constitution, because in the Congolese constitution, it's stated that everywhere you should have these 50-50 women and men, but sometimes we are having problem to have those women coming in politics, but we continue to push them, to call them, because as you know, again, women have suffered a lot in Congo, or what they rape, and they are the one who are suffering because no job for men, and they are the one working, to sustain the whole family. Thank you.
Chaine.
Hi everyone, my name is Oladeji Tiemu. I'm the president of the Harvard African Law Association. And I just wanted to briefly tell everyone the Taste of Africa is starting at 8 p.m. And I also wanted to make sure everyone was aware of our co-sponsors who have really supported at the Africa Development Conference, to give them major thank you for supporting this endeavor, specifically Alupo and Oyebode and the African Exim Bank. Without their support, this would have been a much more difficult endeavor. So thank you so much for your support. Also, this is our 10th year anniversary. We hope to see 10 more years, 20 more years of Africa Development Conference between the law school and the Kennedy School. Thank you so much.